And now we will kick things off with a Skift Research Global Travel Outlook and our first trend dive of the day. Please welcome Skift Senior Research Analyst Seth Borko.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It's so great to be here with you virtually, and we're doing this live in person. It's a lot of fun. What we're going to get into today is talk about some of the very first megatrends. In my first section, we're going to talk about a couple of trends that are all kind of around the idea of navigating change. So let's just jump into it. What happens next? What's going to happen in 2022? Well, here's where I want to start. I mean, with a glass of beer, that's true. I'm going to save that for after the presentation. But I want to ask you all a question out there in the audience. Is this glass half full or half empty? I think that's a very apt analogy for where we are in the travel industry today. It feels like almost every data point we look at, if you're an optimist or a pessimist, you can kind of make both cases. If you check it out online, our founder was just speaking, Rafat, he has an open essay about the need for optimism in the travel industry. And we are optimists. That said, travel can easily appear half empty at first blush. So this is data from Skift Research. This is our forecast for global cross-border trips. Basically, how much international travel we think is going to take place. And if you're a half-empty kind of person, well, you got a lot of data points to draw on. You can say this is the worst decline we've seen pretty much ever. Currently, international travel is below where it was pre-9/11. We're back to 1990s levels. And our forecast doesn't call for a full recovery of international travel until 2024. Yeah, definitely half empty. But like I said, we are optimists. And here's the optimism that I see. If we're at 1999 levels and we need to get back to 2019, we're going to have pretty much 20 years worth of international travel growth packed into the next 3 years. And as a result, the growth rates are going to be huge. They're going to go through the roof. In the last 10 years before the pandemic, international travel would have grown, 4% a year on average. We're going to 10x that this year. We're going to do 44% growth this year. And we think that there's room for it to accelerate even further to 90% plus growth in 2023. The same is true for pretty much all major travel sectors. We actually did global market estimates for all 4 of these sectors: online travel, airline, hotel, and cruise. That's in our Skift Research Outlook, which you can access via our Skift Research site. Now, in terms of dollar volumes, we're not going to fully recover to 2019 levels, but the point here is that we're really moving past the nadir and that we are in 2022 as the true year of travel's recovery. And take the hotel industry, for instance, which room revenue-wise globally grew at about 1% a year in 2019. We think that industry is going to grow at almost 55% this coming year. So we're seeing a massive reacceleration. This is daily new COVID cases in the US, and you're probably thinking to yourself, all right, fine, where's the optimism here, huh? Because you do see that huge and intimidating Omicron spike. Well, here's where I would come in with the glass is half full, so to speak. I would say COVID's impact on travel is lessening. What we're looking at here is new COVID cases in the US for each of those outbreaks in blue, and then in yellow, it's the TSA passenger volumes benchmarked to 2019. And what you can see is that although the outbreaks do keep getting bigger, the impact on travel is lessening. And I would say that this is not just because people are becoming more irresponsible, but it's because we have new tools and new abilities to continue to travel even as we continue to see new variants. This is US data, and especially in the US, if you want a vaccine, you pretty much have access to it. We have tests, we have therapeutics, and so increasingly, if you're at a high-risk group, you can't travel still. But if you are in a lower risk group, you can make responsible travel decisions, even as we will see more waves. And make no mistake, it's very clear that Omicron will not be the last wave. You'd better be practicing your Greek alphabet. We're going to have more. And that's causing some uncertainty. Now, I'm going to queue up a slide where I'm about to show. It's our Skift Recovery Index. This is a proprietary tool that we put together. And it basically shows for 22 different countries how their travel industries are holistically doing compared to 2019. 100 is full recovery. 50 is 50% recovery. So let's take a look at this graphic. It's pretty intriguing. It's monthly travel scores by country. And so you'll notice how much every country changes, right? Like, sometimes one country is doing better than others. There's a lot of variability. I do think one thing that stands out to me is that Mexico is very consistently in the lead. And look, there they go. They just crossed the 100 mark. That means they were, for a brief moment there, fully recovered as far as their travel industry goes. And there they go, back above 100 again. And so I sort of think of that like if you build it, they will come. Remember that movie? If you open up, travelers will come. I mean, for better or for worse, but it seems true. The other trend that's consistent to me is just in that middle of that chart, just how variable it is and how much different countries' policies affect how they travel, how many travelers they can attract. And so as a result, I would say between these new variants, between the different differences between countries, the only real thing we know for sure is that uncertainty is the new certainty. This is the first megatrend of the afternoon, by the way. I'm a data guy, and so I get really excited when I find a really on-the-nose data set. So something called the World Uncertainty Index really caught my attention. That's perfect. It's a bunch of academics, and they look at Economist Intelligence Unit country reports for 150 countries, and they basically count up how many times the word or similar words to uncertain are used to quantitatively measure just how uncertain the world is. And what you can see is that what you've been feeling is correct. This is the most uncertain moment in recent memory. And in fact, I think an interesting stat, the average age of the world today is 30 years old. That means for about half of the world's population, for over 3.5 billion people, this is the single most uncertain moment of their lives. That is a very big deal, and that is going to have psychological and behavioral impacts that ripple out for years and decades to come. And as a result, people are going to take those behavioral changes, and they're going to book and travel differently. This is the second megatrend of this little talk. New booking patterns create novel opportunities. Well, they create challenges too, but with challenge comes opportunity. This is data from Skyscanner showing the booking window for their flights aggregated by year. And of course, what's notable is that in 2019, a little over half of Skyscanner's flights were booked at least 30 days in advance. That is totally flipped during the pandemic, and now more than half of flights are booked in 30 days or less. And in fact, a large chunk, just about a fifth, are booked in a week or less. I also don't need to tell many in this audience that cancellations are through the roof. And so, this is a tough environment for companies to respond to. It creates opportunities, but the answer is that, well, companies need to adapt. Let's hear what the CEO of Booking Holdings had to say about new booking patterns.
The fact is, we have to continue to think about how can we make sure we're prepared for anything that happens down the road.
Short and sweet and to the point. But the answer to these new booking patterns and this uncertainty is agility. Organizations and institutions need to be able to move quickly, be flexible, and encourage new thinking and experimentation from their business leaders. We would sum it up here. Uncertainty requires leaders to experiment with new ways of doing business. So the next two mega trends that I'm going to talk to you about are these two new experimental ways of going about business. The first of these we're calling the financialization of travel. So it's the merging of fintech and banking with the travel industry. And it's how you can adopt your checkout and your checkout process to incorporate lots of interesting technology. One of the more prominent forms of this is buy now, pay later, or installment plans. And if you were shopping for a Peloton during the pandemic, and I'm sure plenty of you were, you might have seen these installment plans. But the credit really should go to emerging markets who really pioneered this technology. I like to talk about Despegar. They're probably the leading OTA in Latin America, and they see 50% plus of their transactions done on installment plans. With pre-COVID volume figures, by the way, that's more than 5 million travel transactions done on installments. The reason why it's so important is because in Latin America, just about 50% of consumers have a credit card. For context, in America, that's 200%, so it's 2 for 1. Every American has 2 credit cards. And so without easy access to credit, Despegar has had to come up with interesting and innovative fintech solutions to sell their travel product, things like prepaid in local currencies, installment plans. This financialization trend can go beyond just buy now, pay later. You can get really creative and really innovative with it. I think Hopper is a very good example of this. We're actually going to hear from Hopper in just a few moments later on in the program. They, for instance, have launched a price fees program. Our founder, Rafat, likes to talk about hate selling sometimes, about the anxiety and agita that comes with booking a flight when you don't know if the price is going to go up. Well, Hopper has come up with a fintech solution with it. They white label it, and they have a lot of partners, including, I think, most recently, Trip.com. And it's a very high margin product. In fact, now more than half of Hopper's revenue comes from fintech rather than tickets. And so this is a real opportunity to explore and experiment and to grow in the travel industry. Of course, it's no secret that ancillary revenue can be a really powerful tool. The airlines have been doing it forever. There was this huge trend towards unbundling, where you take apart all the different components of a ticket and resell them separately. The low-cost airline carriers were most prominently doing this. And you can see these are the 10 airlines with the highest share of ancillaries. You can see at these airlines, on average, pre-COVID, about a third of their revenues were coming from ancillaries. That's a huge success. What's interesting to me, though, is what happened during the pandemic. Ancillaries went from 37% of revenue to 44% of revenue. And so actually the share increased. So during a crisis, the ability to sell ancillaries, to properly unbundle and merchandise became a huge cushion and a huge pillar of support for these businesses. And lots of people across travel are taking notice. And so this is the final trend for my segment. We're going to get into some executive Q&A and then some more. But my last trend is unbundling of services spreading across all of travel. So we think that unbundling is not just going to be airlines going forward. It's going to be hotels. It's going to be even a traditionally classic all-inclusive type of company, like a cruise line, really known for their all-inclusives. They're going to unbundle as well. This data that I've got up here is an Oracle survey that we did talking to hospitality execs. And as you can see, a huge majority of hospitality execs, nearly 80%, intend to grow their non-room revenue opportunities in the coming year. Now, there are two sides to this unbundling trend. I've been talking about it as only a good thing, but there are some people who would say, well, isn't unbundling kind of just nickel and diming your consumers? Isn't it just a bad customer experience? But I think the sort of retort to that is it's sort of like what happened in the cereal aisle. You know, they used to have a single type of cereal, like a Cheerios, and that was the only thing that you could eat. But now there are dozens of Cheerios. You want Honey Nut, you want Frosted, you want fruit, you want chocolate, you want whole wheat. You can have your choice. And by the way, if you like the traditional Cheerios, you can still buy those too, right? It's about taking up more shelf space and being able to offer consumers exactly what they want and letting them tailor their choice to what you offer, right? And so I kind of see it in that perspective, where it's not necessarily a bad thing. The customer who still wants and can afford the full fare airline ticket or hotel room, they can do that. But maybe they don't want to pay for all of the services, including that. They want to buy specific merchandise products that tailor to them specifically, and now they can do that as well. Now, there's always going to be people who say that it's not a good customer experience, and so you have this constant cycle of unbundling and rebundling. Just look at what's happening with Netflix and cable. But nonetheless, we do believe that unbundling is a powerful trend and where the industry is headed in the next several years. All right, so I'll wrap it up here. That's my segment. I want to just reiterate, we at Skift Research really believe that 2022 is travel's year of recovery, where it begins in earnest. That said, though, there's still a lot of uncertainty in the world of travel. And that uncertainty is driving all sorts of new booking patterns, requiring companies to be agile and to experiment with new ways of selling travel. That will include things like the financialization of travel and the unbundling of travel. Thank you.